Welcome back. So in our last explainer, we broke down a genuinely fascinating concept, how investing just $300 a month, starting at age 25, can harness the absolute magic of compound interest to turn into over $1 million by the time you hit 65. It's a massive, life-changing number, right? And the math behind it, well, it's actually surprisingly simple.
But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who start that journey, they never actually finish it. And it's not because the math is wrong or because the market is rigged against you. It's because of 5 quiet, deeply human, wealth-killing mistakes. In this explainer, we're going to expose exactly what those mistakes are and how you can fix them before they completely derail your financial future.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the uncomfortable truth, move into those 5 wealth-killing mistakes, break down 5 simple habits to fix them, and finally, we'll tackle the ultimate behavioral challenge.
All right, part 1, the uncomfortable truth and why you might be building on a weak foundation. We really have to start with the single most common reason people end up cashing out their retirement accounts way too early, getting hit with massive, completely avoidable penalties and taxes in the process.
Mistake number 1, no emergency fund. The absolute biggest unforced error you can make is investing aggressively before you have cash set aside for when life inevitably goes wrong. I know, it's incredibly tempting to throw every spare dollar you have into the market and to chase that $1 million goal. But honestly, skipping your safety net, it's a critical mistake.
An emergency fund is basically 3 to 6 months of essential expenses kept in a regular savings account, not invested. This cash isn't about growth, it's about survival. You see, investing without this safe, liquid cash is exactly like building a massive house with absolutely no foundation. It might look perfectly fine on a sunny day, right? But the moment the first storm hits, say a broken down car, a sudden medical bill, or a lost paycheck, you're forced to sell your investments at the worst possible time just to stay afloat.
Let's dive into part 2, the 5 wealth-killing mistakes, also known as your portfolio's silent assassins. So we've laid the foundation, but what happens when our own emotional reactions to the stock market's natural turbulence step in?
Mistake number 2. Panic selling during downturns. The stock market does not go up in a perfectly straight line. It just doesn't. It drops, sometimes by 20%, 30%, or even more. And while historically it has literally always eventually recovered, let's be real, the human brain just isn't wired to patiently sit through a 30% drop in net worth. When balances plummet, people panic. They hit the sell button. But by doing this, they permanently lock in those losses. And when the market finally rebounds, they've missed the recovery entirely.
Here is something absolutely crucial to understand. Missing just the 10 best days in the stock market over a multi-decade period can cut your total returns drastically. And here's the kicker. Those best days almost always happen right after the worst days. The people who do the absolute best over time, they're usually the ones who did the least. They kept their hands off the keyboard, they kept contributing right through those terrifying downturns, and they didn't touch a thing.
Next up is mistake number 3, high fees you don't notice. This is something that sounds totally harmless. Investment fees seem incredibly small, right? Just 1% to maybe 1.5%. You might look at that and think, what's the big deal? But over decades, well, that magic compounding we talked about earlier, it starts working in reverse. It compounds entirely against you.
Just look at the sheer scale of the math here. On a $1 million target over a 40-year period, the difference between a 0.05% fee and a 1% fee isn't just a few bucks. It is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars completely vanished from your pocket. The crucial point here is that fees are one of the very, very few variables in investing you can actually control. And this is exactly why savvy, long-term investors strongly favor low-cost index funds over actively managed ones.
Which brings us to mistake number 4, waiting for the right time to start. A lot of people delay investing because they're waiting to feel, financially ready. They're hoping for a big promotion at work, or for every single penny of debt to be totally cleared, or maybe for a time when they suddenly understand the market perfectly before taking the plunge.
I really want you to burn this quote into your memory. Time in the market matters more than timing the market. Someone who starts small, imperfectly, and maybe even a little bit confused at age 25 will almost always end up way ahead of someone who waits until age 35 to jump in with a larger, perfectly organized amount of money.
Consider this comparison. Starting with a tiny amount, just $50 a month starting today, usually beats waiting a couple of years to start with $200 a month. It kind of defies logic, right? Until you remember how magical those extra years of compounding really are, giving your money more time to grow on itself. It's the ultimate cheat code.
And finally, mistake number 5, not increasing contributions over time. You see, many people actually do the hard part. They set up their 401k or IRA, they pick a good fund, and then they literally never touch it again, which means their savings rate completely stagnates, even as their income grows significantly over their working years.
But there's a brilliant, almost completely unfelt fix for this. Just tie your contributions to your career progress. Simply bump up your contribution rate by a mere 1% every single year when you get an annual raise. You will barely feel the difference in your day-to-day spending, but I promise you, that tiny 1% bump can drastically alter your final $1 million number over a 20 or 30-year span. It's huge.
Okay, part 3, the 5 simple habits, or basically what good actually looks like. So we've agitated the problem by exposing the villains threatening your wealth. Now, let's flip the script entirely and arm you with the solutions.
Think of this as your ultimate playbook. Honestly, building wealth isn't like some thrilling action movie. It's actually kind of boring. It's mostly about consistently doing these 5 simple things. Building that cash emergency fund first. Automating your investments so you don't even have to think about them. Gritting your teeth and staying invested through those scary downturns. Relentlessly keeping your fees low and just inching your contributions up as your income grows. Doing this over a very long time, that is exactly how you win.
Part 4, the behavioral challenge and looking at the bigger picture. This brings us to the single most important realization of this entire explainer. Going back to our $1 million example, that wealth wasn't built on a lucky stock pick that magically doubled overnight. It wasn't built on some wild insider secret. No, it was built on decades of steady, mundane contributions, left entirely alone to compound.
The actual investing part, picking a low-cost diversified index fund, that's genuinely the easy part. The true challenge? It's behavioral. It's looking at a crashing market and consciously choosing not to panic. It's not stopping your automatic transfers just because you suddenly want a slightly nicer car. And it's definitely not waiting for a perfect time to start, which, spoiler alert, never, ever arrives. You are your portfolio's biggest threat. But armed with this knowledge, you are also its greatest asset.
So, I want you to be really honest with yourself right now. Which of these 5 mistakes are quietly sitting in your portfolio? I will freely admit I made at least 2 of these myself early on. Recognizing the error is step 1, but actively fixing it is what separates those who just dream of $1 million from those who actually achieve it. Which path will you choose? Thanks so much for joining me to unpack all of this, and I'll see you in the next explainer.